Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you join us here this evening in the UK, that is, over at Port Ricard in the south of France, not far from Marseille and Saint-Tropez. We've got 14 cars on the grid at the moment for this half-fast gaming, 103 minutes of Port Ricard. I think we have got 16 cars expected on the grid this evening, but I know we are going to change the servers over in the next 5 to 10 minutes, so there will be some drivers popping in and out of the server, I'm sure. Just a bit of background on tonight's race then, for those that are watching, joined us here on YouTube this evening. Refueling is required during the race with no requirement to change your tyres. The pit lane will remain open for repairs as well. And the qualifying times have been set over the week, so this evening the drivers are undergoing their 30-minute practice session before the race session starts at approximately 8 o'clock UK time. I apologise in advance if I keep using the UK time, but that's my easiest reference point. In fact, what I will do before the race starts is I will bring up the Eastern time as well, so I've got my eye on that. So 13 corners on the GT3 track of Port Ricard, 17 on the Formula 1 track with that noticeable chicane down the back straight there. But unfortunately this evening we go from turn 7 straight down to turn 8, where the drivers have got their foot flat on the floor all the way down that straight. Before that, flat out right-hander in towards the notoriously tricky Sector 3. Alien lap times around here, I don't know, I would say around sort of the mid 54s. The average lap time that we saw from the quality of the grid that we've got on this evening tonight was around the 1:57 mark, with the fastest times hitting the 55s and some in the 2 minutes down towards the bottom of the grid. Fair spread across sector 1, 2 and 3 as well. So what we will do now is while we wait for the service to sort itself out, and we will jump on board with some of the drivers as they complete their practice with 7 minutes left to go. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, we're just going to wait for that server to restart and then we will rejoin the server. We just purely because some of our drivers this evening are actually joining us from all over the world, and we just need to find one that suits them better than the one we were currently running for the sake of everybody involved in the race. So this evening it is my first HFG broadcast. I've done a couple of races with Jeff before and a couple of his teams. I don't know the HFG regular drivers as well as I do some other communities, so you have to bear with me while I learn those as well. But other than that, I'm hoping that everyone will get involved in the chat and help me along the way. There's a couple of names on the grid that I do recognise. I've got Harry Bellas down there, who is part of Quantum Racing team who I race with. We've got Chris Springbrook as well. No, Springbrook Raywell, he's also in the Quantum Racing team for one of the upcoming community series that we're in. And there's a couple of other names that I recognise on there from the Transatlantic series that HFG recently ran. So just while we now wait for that server to reload, which I'm being told I think it is now, let me just find the password for it and we will jump back in and get some on-track action. Nothing ever goes well in the world of technology, but you wouldn't expect it to. So let's jump back on with Specs, car number 77 of the Aston Martin, as he heads down the start finish straight now with 2 minutes and 45 left of this practice session to go. These drivers have been practicing the majority of the week, so we've only got the Aston Martin out on track at the moment with only 1 minute 37 left of the session before the race gets underway. We're going to have 15 cars on the grid this evening. I'll run you through that grid order as soon as the starting grid starts to form and on that warm-up lap around this 3.6 mile French circuit. .57.7 set there by Spec, which is a very similar time to what we've been seeing them set all week and in the qualifying session in that Aston Martin, which we know is a very stable around here, and it's your all-rounder is your Aston Martin, especially around circuits like these. Now, most drivers don't particularly enjoy Paul Ricard when you first mention it to them, but it's one of those races that everyone always attends and actually really loves once they've actually got themselves underway. It's a bit like Barcelona. The Sector 3 catches everybody out. It's one of those tracks where actually the slower you are, the faster your lap time is, which sounds ridiculous, but I'm sure some people in the chat can probably relate to that. Evening, Chris. Good luck. I'll see you pop up in the chat there. I'm still getting used to being on YouTube. It's a whole new experience for me, so all well and good. Just start the stream in the corner, so I've got that up and running as well. I'll press play on that. Refresh this, there we go, and I've got the chat now so I can see people in the chat. Right, let's just do one of our grid walks, shall we, before we get the race underway this evening. We've got 2 minutes and 30 before we've got the green light on that warm-up lap. Work our way through the grid. Mateus, Augusto, Spect, who we just spent most of the practice on board with in the Aston Martin at car number 77 there. Our Jitsu there, again I apologise for any mispronunciations of the names, I am brand new to HFG. This evening in the McLaren we've got Mr Chris Springbrook there, Chris Davis in 111. The M4, which I know he's been enjoying a lot, looks a little bit squirrely on the exit of Sector 1 though, so that'll be interesting to see what happens throughout that race. On the left we've got the car number 5 of Enderez, Steve in the car number 5 as I mentioned previously there. Car number 96 belongs to Matt Cooper, again in that BMW M4. The McLaren number 16, Lou Gar, he starts 8th on the grid. Moving further down now, the Lamborghini, a personal favourite of mine, car number 5, 101. That's driven by Matt Mudd, who starts 9th on the grid. Kurt Bradby in the McLaren 720S starts 9th on the grid. We've got the Bentley of 242, driven by the one and only HFG's Jeff there. Lovely livery there, Jeff. Moving a bit further down, and we've got the Aston Martin there of the 329 of David Hulbert. He starts 12th on the grid. And then we've got the McLaren starting 13th on the grid there, driven by Alberto Fernandez. The M4159, driven by Zach Groh. And then where we should have Arabella starting on the grid, who has not registered for this evening's race. So we have a 15-car grid formation this evening. Let's just pop into free cam down here for turn 1 as they go on their warm-up lap. Let's pop down here and see what we get. So with 40 seconds left, as I mentioned, so we've got 103 minutes. Now the reason we've got 103 minutes is you're probably thinking there's some technical reason or some specification or some event. It just links to a local radio station that Jeff's part of. So again, there's always a reason for everything we do at HFG, but that was a new one to me. So just a reminder of tonight's session info is refueling is required during the race. There is no pit window. That's my camera just changed there because I'm on board with the cars. I'll go into the helicopter cam now as I continue talking to you through some of the more of this information. Qualifying times were set over the course of the week. The servers have been live for the drivers to set the times when their time suits them. They've all had 30 minutes of practice this evening to get those pressure settings right. A few more final fuel calculations and a last minute feel for the track. The average qualifying time we saw was a 1:57. 13 corners on this GT3 layout track around the south of France Paul Ricard circuit, and we are moments away now from lights out for this evening's 1 hour 43 minutes race hosted by HFG. I'm going to shut up now and just let you ride on board with some of these cars just so you can hear what they sound like. We'll jump on board with the leader Matthias Freitas on the rear ring there of that Aston Martin as we go down towards turn 3 and turn 4 of sector 1. Right, now you're going to have to suffer some of my dodgy camera work as we head down towards turn 1 for that all-important turn 1, 2 and 3 sequence, which is going to cause hopefully a nice clean start. Only 15 cars on the grid as I've previously mentioned. Let's see what happens as they come through into turn 1, shall we? So we are getting ready to go green as the cars now are coming around the last sector there of sector 3. Let's park our camera just on the apex here. If we come this side of the bollard, they've gone too far. Okay, and the leader there of Matthias Freitas in the car number 88 Aston Martin, he's coming around towards the end of the circuit now, turn 12, and once he sees turn 13 in his sights, he's going to be waiting for that green light about a quarter of the way down the start-finish straight there towards turn 1. So fair old run and plenty of opportunity for that slipstream to take effect, which I'm sure they probably would like to try and break the toe of now. As you can see, they are now moving towards the start-finish line now, and you'll hear the engines rev up. There we are green, and we are racing at Paul Ricard this evening with an hour and 43 minutes on the clock, 103 minutes in total as the cars now come down towards turn 1. Looks like everyone's had a nice clean start. Everyone's through onto turn 1. They're going to jump back on board with the leaders now, as we can see them coming down towards turn 3 and 4. So the grid is still as it currently stands with Freitas, Augusto, Speck, Endurance, Jitsu, Gar, Springbrook, Chris Davies, Matt Cooper, Matthew Moore, Grove, Bradbury, Jeff Hulbert, Fernandez and Jackie Harris now as the leader heads down towards turn 8. We'll jump on board with him just to see exactly how that car handles there. He's still got the 3 front runners there leading the way in towards turn 8, which is the tight right-hander as they come in towards there. Now we'll just jump on board with the back of his rear ring to see him take it around there. Always ran quite right through there, just made it back inside of the bollard there to avoid the track warning, I would have thought, as he now brings it in towards turn 9. The long right-hander there puts no end of pressure on the left-hand side of those tyres there, keeping the car really steady. The Aston Martin behind him with Augusto is all over the back of him, and Speck is not too far behind as well, who is also in the Aston Martin. I suspect they will be running very similar setups, but we know how stable that Aston Martin can be anyway, especially around circuits, although it does like to eat curbs. Not so much of a problem around Paul Ricard, but again, it's definitely something that will benefit the handling of those cars as they're now well and truly out on the way out of sector 3 down towards turn 1. Freitas still leads the way with Augusto in P2, Spec P3, Endurez P4 and Arjitsu P5. Switching back on now to the external cams, let's see exactly what's happened during that first lap. As you can see, the front runners there are taking a lead away. They're 2 seconds behind from P4 now. They are in a race of their own as it stands at the moment. Obviously a very long way to go at the minute. Let's jump on board with a helicopter cam of Steve Endurance there, who is currently in P4, the car number 5 of the Mercedes 2020 AMG Evo there, who has got the McLaren for company on his tail, as he's in the middle of sector 1 now of the Jitsu as he comes around towards turn 6, and you've just got turn 7 to go, and it's really important now to get a clean exit on the exit of this corner here, because the McLaren is going to be all over the back of him down this straight now. Although they should be fairly matched on power. You can just see in the distance there the BMW M4 of Chris Davies there keeping it together. We know that BMW is a little bit slippery on the exit of some of those corners, especially out of sector 1. The slow speeds, it doesn't seem to be as stable as we would like. Spect has just set the fastest lap then, which is on the opening lap, that I should say. Time's not comparable. The McLaren just has a little look there on the outside to see if he can make it stick, with the Mercedes just keeping it in position, parking that car right on the apex, which is exactly what he needed to do. What we have got right behind him though is we have got the McLaren of Lou Gar, who is going to be waiting to take advantage of any form of contact or error from these two that are leading the way in the front of this fight for P4. And again, as they come into sector 3 here, not going to be many opportunities for overtaking manoeuvres here, but that exit of turn 13 down towards turn 1, it's imperative that he gets that clean exit towards the start finish straight. Jumping back on with the front runners, then we've still got Mateus at the front there in the Aston Martin, followed by Augusto and Spec as they come in towards turn 1. That front 88 Aston Martin there just starting to stretch his legs a little bit. That gap just got above a second there, with the two behind just sticking together a little bit. But again, as I said before, these three at the front here are in a race of their own. They're 5 seconds lead now away from P4. These three are going to leapfrog each other for the entire race. Jumping back on board with Andres at the front then just to see what this battle's doing. He's still got that McLaren for company. Lugar all over the back of him, and Arjitsu as they're going to be waiting to pounce for any mistake. As he now does sector 1, he knows he's going to get this absolutely perfect. Any form of error around here, he's going to be eaten alive on that straight by the McLaren going down towards turn 8. Can he get a clean exit on turn 7? Jumping on his rear wing then to see exactly what that looks like. Looks pretty clean to me. You can just see Lugar and Springbrook in the background there. Still fights it out between them. Doesn't look like we're going to get much of an opportunity for an overtake here, but we know how powerful this McLaren can be. But it is a little bit balanced out again by the fact that we've got the Mercedes there as well, as he's gaining on him as he goes towards turn 8 here, which is a fast right-hander. The braking point's got to be absolutely spot on, and the Mercedes just staying ahead there for another lap. Any mistake through sector 3 though, and that McLaren is going to eat him for breakfast. Jumping back on with the front runners then, so we've still got Mateus here in the Aston Martin as he's coming through sector 3 himself. Now this complex, horrible sector for anybody that has driven this track. It's not particularly favourite of the drivers, but it's one of those where you always get a good race from it. As he comes in towards turn 12 now, again very important he gets that good exit from turn 13 down towards the straight there, because those two Aston Martins behind him will use any opportunity to jump on him. Again, that gap is now up to 5.5 seconds. These three are in a race of their own as they extend the gap again. Mateus just setting the fastest lap then of a 1:56.842, which is only the fastest lap by about 0.04 of a second. So you can see how these three are definitely in a race of their own. Oh, what's happened here then? So we've got Springbrook now that's managed to jump the Lugar in the McLaren, who I can only assume has had an off at some point. He must have done his lap time is down during that last lap. So Springbrook now is on the tail of Arjitsu in that pink and black McLaren there. You can see on your screen now the Mercedes going a little bit out of shape there in towards that turn 5, and I'm hoping he gets a clean exit on turn 6. Thing is, we've got now that this McLaren is going to have to be defending and attacking at the same time. It looks like he's got a slightly better run this time though on the exit of 7 as he goes down towards turn 8. That McLaren is so much closer to him as they're going down towards the end now, so this is going to be really difficult for the Mercedes to defend here, because if he gets level with him before the corner, he's not really got a lot he can do in way of defence. As the McLaren pulls to the left hand side there, he's going to send it around the outside of turn 8. Has he made a clean pass here? He just needs to be able to pull back in front to cover off that Mercedes lot. There we go. Yep, he's cleared it off. Chris Davies having a little look behind him as well, looking to send it up the inside there, but thinks better of it. Reserved his judgment, ready for the next lap. These two here are having a right battle now, so the Mercedes is on the outside there, McLaren covering off the inside. He's got a slightly tighter line there so he can carry more speed on the exit of that corner as they're now coming through out up towards turn 10 and turn 11. The McLaren still slightly in front but slightly off the racing line, runs wide there, pushed wide by the Mercedes. This is great battle in here. Chris Springbrook is still waiting to make that move. Any mistake from these two and he's going to be there and go, yes please, I'll have P4, thank you very much. Oh, and we got contact there. The McLaren I think just caught Chris out off guard there just as he came round. Both cars have stopped on the track. That is such a shame. That was a battle that was going to be shaping up nicely over the course of the race, but I think it just caught them both off guard. Still got 15 cars on track. Jumping back on board with the front runners now, we've got an overtake that we've had, which is Andreas Spector's overtake. He's gone from P3 to P1 and he actually started P3, so that is a great result for him so far. We've still got Mateus behind him looking for a move. We know these Aston Martins are very equal paced. All of their best times are within hundredths of each other rather than tenths, so they're very, very up there on the pace as he now comes around the exit of sector 1 towards turn 7, which is that long run down the straight, with the three of them running side by side as it stands at the moment, although the gap now to P4 is 10.6 seconds. These three are in a race of their own and I think they're going to be jumping over each other throughout the entire 90 minutes that remain. Let's see what's going on with P4 then. Steve Endress managed to get that space back, which is P4, which he was having to defend from the McLaren and the BMW of Chris Springbrook there for the last 2 laps, but an incident on the previous lap has made them come together, leaving the Mercedes some breathing space. And as you can see, the next car behind him is Matt Cooper, who is about 1.2 seconds behind, and he's lapping a little bit quicker than what Steve is in front, so I will expect to see him move in a couple of laps time. And let's not forget about Lugar and that McLaren there just behind them, the orange and blue McLaren. We know he's got the pace. He was there on the previous lap before. He got caught up a little bit in that collision previously and ran a bit wide with a slightly slower lap time, which allowed those front runners to get away. So let's see where he comes back through over the course of this race. 1 hour and 30 minutes still to go. There's a lot of time. We've got tyres to consider, fuel to consider, driver mistakes to consider, internet connection to consider. So you can see that the car 88 there, the Aston Martin of Mateus, running in P2, who has lost his P1 position to Andreas Specht, are now in Sector 1, but he's all over the back of him and he's by no means away and comfortable. Augusto is just dropping off a little bit now. He's a second behind. He's by no means out of this battle, but he's just maybe he's going for some tyre preservation or some fuel preservation. We don't know. We don't have that information available to us. But what I can tell you is that Andreas got a very, very clean exit there of turn 7 as he goes down towards turn 8 now, which is giving him that comfortable gap, which is what is needed. Right on board with the leader now as he goes in towards turn 8. You can just watch how tight this right-hander is here in a moment and how much runoff these drivers can use. Dab of the brakes there at the 50 board, into 5th gear. You can run it out wide here, as long as you stay within them chevrons there, and then braking again just after that second lamppost on the right. And these corners do get tighter and tighter and tighter as you go through them, and they become more and more difficult to control the cars as the tyre wear goes down, although they will obviously have the lighter cars with the fuel consumption on their side, so it does balance things out a little bit. Jumping back on with Steve then in the Mercedes, as he's also now in Sector 3. He's having a bit of a lonely race now at the moment. I can see we have got a yellow flag off the car number 16 by the looks of that, which is Lugar, which we know that McLaren have the pace, and he was managed to work his way through the field. He is now a yellow flag, and he's dropped right back down into P13, which is such a shame because we know he's got the pace, but with an hour and 30 to go, he's got plenty of time to recover that, and I'm sure he's not concerned, knowing full well exactly what he can do with that. Jumping back on board then with Springbrook, who is currently running P10 after that disappointing collision he had in Sector 3 there. He started P5, so at the moment he's got some work to do to get his way back up to make himself I know Chris, he won't be very happy where he is at the moment, so he'll keep working at it, and this is where he comes into his own. He will work and work and work, and his best races, you can see he sends the move there on Jeff as he goes in towards turn 1. What a move that was. That's a great move as he comes down now towards the Sector 1 trickier technical complex, down towards turn 3, 4, 5 and 6. So that's one more off his hit list now. That puts him in a P6 as they start their 7th lap of this race. Jumping back on board with the leaders then, we've got Andreas, and this time the Mateus Aston Martin 88 is a little bit closer on this particular occasion. Let's jump on back of his rear wing. You can see there he's trying to break the toe, weaving away, and Adair Augusto is not far behind him either, and he's going to be considering making a move. Any form of contact or errors from these two, and he is going to be saying P1, thank you very much, I'm off into the sunset. So these three are very matched on pace. Let's just ride on board with the rear wing of the Aston Martin now for a few moments. Aston Martin now is of Mateus is a lot closer on this time round. Let's jump on board with the helicopter now as we go in towards turn 1. If we're going to see any move, it's going to be turn 1 or turn 8, as we've seen on previous occasions around here. I think the Aston Martin there, Spec 77, got a very clean exit of turn 13, which has definitely helped him out. These three now are well and truly in a race of their own as P4 crosses the lines. That's 16.3 seconds now, these two are. We're going to be seeing blue flags in this race. We've only got 15 cars on the grid. That just puts you into perspective how fast these three are racing at the front and how hard they are. And I'm not too worried about missing an overtake on this occasion because these three are going to be jumping over each other all the way around. Let's jump back on board with Steve then in the Mercedes. Let's give you the broadcast view as well on your stream, not just mine. There we go, and you can see he's got quite a comfortable gap now. He's 17 seconds off the cars in front, which won't bother him too much. And Springbrook there has made that move on Zach Grow as well in the Porsche number 11. Car 111 BMW M4 of Chris Davis, aka Springbrook, is now back up into P5, which is where he started. So he said to himself, the race is very much on for him now. As we will jump on board with him in a second, let's just see exactly what this Mercedes is doing through here. He looks like he's got no damage earlier. I think he managed to avoid that contact. Don't forget that Springbrook is running that front end damage from when he had the contact on lap 4 earlier. See, that Mercedes is absolutely planted through there as it goes in towards sector 3. Jumping on board with Springbrook now, who is 6.7 seconds off. Let's just keep an eye on that pace. We know that Chris is a recovery driver. A very good recovery driver, so I would expect to see him battling for P4 at any point, really. Let's jump on board with Jeff now as he comes through sector 3 in towards that horrific turn 10, 11, 12 complex. I absolutely hate it. Don't know whether I mentioned that or not yet. As he's now all over the back of Zach Grow as well in that McLaren, in that Porsche, which we know has pace around here. Commentated on a race not long ago which involved two Porsches around here, and they stole the show and they were very much on their own. So Spec, Mateus and Augusto now still P1, 2 and 3. Augusto's still got that fastest lap, which is a 1:56.5, and I can tell you now, looking at my screen, they're all lapping within a tenth of each other, so they are very much in their own race, and that's going to go on long into the night, those three there. Still on board with Jeff now as he comes through turn 1. His last lap time was a 59.8, which is representative of those that is around him. And you can see that Zach Grow's just gone deep there into turn 1 and 2, which he will be kicking himself about, because not only has he lost one place to Jeff, he's lost 2 places to Matt Cooper as well. He really will be upset about that now, because he worked so hard to get where he was. So the car number there of 96, I believe, which is Matt Cooper, he's managed to say, yes please, I'll have that, I'll capitalise that mistake and I'll take it back. Having said that, Zach Grow's now got the long straight in the Porsche. If he can get a good exit of turn 7, he's going to have an opportunity to take that back. Jumping on board with Matt Cooper then on his rear wing. You can see he's got a little bit of aero damage there, so he's obviously been off somewhere along the line today. Springbrook's up into the road there. You can see that on the driver tracker on the right hand side of your screens at home. The Porsche here still joining. We've got about halfway down the straight now. There's a long way to go. He's going to pull out and try and go on board with him. Let's jump on board with Zach Grows. You can see him there. He'll try and send it around the outside. He's going to run wide. He's going to have to lift, otherwise he's going to give himself a time penalty or warning. Something else that we don't know how many warnings that each of these drivers have had. David Hulbert there, still hanging back a little bit. Lamborghini of the Porsche in front of him. Is that the Lamborghini in front of him? The Lamborghini of Matthew Mudd there. Looks like he is. He's P10. Jumping back on board with the leaders, and let's see what's going on at the front here. They're in a race of their own, as we know. A lot closer on this occasion. Look at them three there running in their own lap times. 1:56.8, 1:56.8, 1:56.5. Augusto there is still all over the back of him, and this is going to be really interesting going down in towards turn 8 now. They've got to get a clean exit of turn 7 because he's not going to get much of an opportunity to defend here. He is 2 tenths up on his lap, but is that going to be enough? We'll go on board with the helicopter. I think that's going to be the best opportunity to see this battle here shaping up. As you can see, Andreas needed that clean exit of turn 7, which he got. but is it enough? Because the slipstream here, we know how powerful it can be, especially the Astons. They're not the fastest cars on the in a straight line on this circuit this evening. Looks like he's done enough to keep him further back at this particular occasion. Brake marker 50, dab at the brakes, into 5th gear, run it around the right hand corner using all of that runoff there that you've got before the chevrons. He's managed to stay in front of the Aston Martin car number 77 for another lap. That's 10 laps now. Going to see a turn 1 lunge now, this time from Mateus, who's a little bit too far back on that occasion. Jumping back on board with Springbok, that gap was 6.7 seconds, it's now down to 5. He's taken a second out of him in 2 laps, so it's not going to be long before we see Springbok challenging Steve P4, which is a battle we've recently seen. It was just that error there between the McLaren and the BMW which has set us back a little bit on timings. So you can see there that Chris's best lap is a 1:57.4, and he's currently lapping in the 57s as well, mid 57, 57.8 in fact was his last lap, so his pace is very much there of those around him. He's currently lapping about a second faster than Steve Andres in front of him in the BMW. So let's see how this shapes up. Jumping back on board with the front runners then as they go in towards turn 8. Andreas there's a little bit, he's going to have to defend here going around the outside of turn 8 by the looks of it. He's going to try and send it up the inside. Jump on board with Mateus now as he goes through the inside there. Can he send it? Can he make it stick? It looks like he can. Yeah, he's just left a bit too much gap there. He's forced him well off wide there, who have to lift. He's lost one but 2 places there because of that defensive move there. And Augusto's gone. There's a gap there. I'm going to take that. I'll have P2. Thank you very much. So we've gone from Andreas Speck there being P1 to now being P3 because of his defensive moves that he's had to pull off there. Like I say though, this is a long way from over yet. We've got an hour and 20 minutes to go, and these 3 at the front here have swapped positions multiple occasions. Very much a long way to go. Yeah, but we'll just jump on board with Andreas Speck just to see how he drives. It looks like some drivers tend to drive a little bit aggressively after they've suffered a loss, just because he gets very close there to the rear end of the Aston Martin there of Mateus, who of Augusto rather, who has managed to take that position back off him. Looks like he's a bit closer on this occasion going towards turn 1. He's going to have to place that Aston Martin. Oh, he had to avoid there. He had to go a little bit deep there to avoid the contact of the rear bumper. He will have been worried there that he's going to make contact. We'll jump on board with his helmet cam now and see exactly what it looks like from where he is, as he will be annoyed because P1 is getting away from him. He's 1.8 seconds back now. It's just worth noting as well, I know we're on board with these 3 at the front here, but Springbok is now 4.4 seconds off Steve in the Mercedes car number 5. That gap has dropped by 2 seconds in the last 3 laps. Springbok is on a recovery drive and a half. We will bring that battle to you as soon as it starts to get a little bit closer, but in the meantime we will jump on the back of Mateus' rear wing as he goes in towards turn 8. Plenty clear enough from any form of attack on this lap. Those 2 battling it out will really help him on this occasion. Jumping on board with Zach Groh then in the Porsche. I keep calling it McLaren because we've got another orange and blue Porsche, which always catches me off guard at the start, with the Lamborghini there of Matthew Mudd in front of him. Personal favourite of mine, that Lamborghini. Recently started driving it. Lovely car since the 1.8 patch. Got the Porsche there and the Aston Martin coming through, not far behind of David Hulbert. Porsche's got some pace as it goes down towards turn 8. Not far behind car number 511, which is Matthew Mudd in that Lamborghini. I'm wondering whether we're going to have to see some sort of defensive moves sooner rather than later there. Just worth noting as well that gap at the front now is starting to extend. Mateus is through. He's on lap 12, lap 13 now. He's 1.5 clear of Augusto, and then an additional 4/10 of Spech, who was the previous leader on the previous lap, car number 77 in the Aston Martin. So we will see exactly what that looks like in a few laps time. And of course we've got the refuelling to contend with as well, which is where things can go from bad to worse or bad to good depending on how well that transpires throughout the race. Nobody's particularly up on their lap on this occasion. Our Jitsu running in P15, who we know had an off at the beginning of the race. Looks like he gained some damage. I'm thinking he probably pitted. I don't have pit wall open, so I'm unable to tell you that information, unfortunately. His lap times though are actually pretty quick for where he is. His lap times are matching those of P5 and P6, so again with an hour and 18 to go, I would imagine we will see some form of fight back from him as he gets towards the end of this race. That gap at the front just starting to extend a little bit now. Again, Mateus is just going down towards turn 8 with a 1.6 second gap behind him, which we know is more than enough. Look at that comfortable gap there. These two at the back here, they are fighting. We'll jump on board with them as he just goes in front now. Car number 77 of Spec manages to retake P2 from Augusto as they go in towards turn 8. Can he make it stick though, because this sector can be quite tricky as he's gone a little bit wide on the exit of turn 8, dabbing the brakes there. It gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Needs a real clean exit through these set of corners here in towards turn 1 again. This race is very much on at the front here. How exciting is this going to be towards the end of the race with these three Aston Martins lapping the 100th of each other on each particular lap, which is something I can't say I've seen in a very long while in real life, let alone on ACC as well. Steve Endures is up 3/10 on this lap. However, Springbrook is now 4 seconds behind, so he's just starting to get within that gap. Whether the dirty air will start to affect him at some point sooner. Chris is half a second down on this lap, but we know he's got the pace there. You can see his lap times in the bottom right hand corner of your screen. His last lap is not too far off his best, so we know his pace is still very much there. Steve's still 2/10 up on this lap as he comes through 2:13. He's 3/10 up as he goes across the line, and this I think is going to be a new personal best for him, which I think it's going to be, and it is. He just sets a 1:57.832, which is a personal best for him. Still 22 seconds away from P3, as these leaders at the front now are still battling out for P2 and P3, but Mateus is going to be welcoming this battle because it's giving him the opportunity to stretch his legs and drive off into the sunset as he goes down now towards turn 8 again, 1.4 seconds in the lead. Steven Jones again 5/10 up on this particular lap, going towards turn 8. Springbrook cannot break that 4 second marker now, which is really interesting because we see him take all that time out of him. He's got to 4 seconds and not been able to improve that gap at all. Our Jitsu is still obviously on the previous lap now. He's currently on lap 13 as he comes around. He's obviously pitted, which is going to help him further into the race. It's just how long he can make those tyres last. Again, unfortunately, I'm not overly familiar with the HFG drivers, so therefore I can't really tell you about how they use their tyres and what their driving style normally is. I'm hoping this won't be my only HFG broadcast, so it's something I'm hoping to learn, and I'll be able to give you more information on that as the, well, I say the year goes on. It's nearly over next year. Jumping back on board then with Kurt Bradley there, who is currently in the McLaren running in P13. He started P10, so he's not going to be very happy with himself at the moment as he runs wide there on the exit of turn 8. I'm wondering whether he's running some damage, and whether we can pick that up on the TV cameras, I don't know. Let's see what we've got. It looks okay. It doesn't seem to be any cosmetic damage, which is normally your key indicating factor. His lap times are in the 2 minutes, so he is significantly off that pace at the front there for 156s, but that is unfair on him as everyone else is also off the pace of those three at the front because they are absolutely rapid at the moment. Just worth noting is that Andreas Speck there, who went down to P3 back into P2, he's closing in on the leader again. He's now down to 1.2 seconds. It's going to be really interesting to see whether we can make anything happen here, because we've seen him overtake in the past. We know he can get into P1. We know he's fast enough to run in P1, but it's the consistency. Every time that he's lost P1 on 2 occasions, it's because of an error, which are being forced from behind him. So, which is again what you would expect to see. Let's jump on board with Matthew Mudd then in that wonderful yellow and black Lamborghini there as he comes through sector 1 towards turn 6 and turn 7. He's got his eyes on Jeff in front of him at the moment, who is currently lapping a very similar lap time to him. He's about 3/10 faster than Jeff actually in front of him. As they go down towards turn 8 now, he's going to make some benefit of that slipstream that's on offer there. It won't be enough to put him in the position to overtake into turn 8 on this occasion, but it will certainly close that gap for him on the next lap. Springbrook is still 4 seconds running behind Steven Gerrard at the moment in that Mercedes, so he's struggling to break that gap. You can see he's got some damage there on the front of his car, which will be hindering him a little bit, and it would appear to be looking at his sector times during sector 3, which again is what you would expect from a high downforce area of the circuit. Jumping back on board with these leaders then, Speck is still 1.3 seconds back. We'll jump on board with him as he goes down towards turn 8 now. You can see that he's actually trying to get some of that slipstream over there, but you can see the car in front there, Matthias Freitas in the Aston Martin himself. Car number 88, he's doing everything he can to break that toe. Jump on board with his rear ring. As you can see, the gap's just starting to open up between the 3 of these now. But it is still worth noting that they are still in a race of their own with a 25-second gap back to P4. And you can just see Springbrook there in the distance in that M4. Very distinct colours. Anyone would think the bloke's South African. As he's coming up towards... Oh, that BMW just sounds so good, doesn't it? I forget how good it is until I jump on board with the cameras. As he's on his way down towards turn 8 himself now as well. But he's nowhere near close enough yet to even be thinking about mounting a challenge. And he's probably gone into some sort of tyre saving, fuel saving mode now. It all depends on how much fuel and tyres they want to save towards the end of this race. If we jump back on board with our Jitsu now, who is currently on lap 15, he's just his pace again 1:56.9. He is matching the times of those in front of him. He's lapping at P2's pace as it stands at the moment. So if he can manage these tyres last to the end of the race and he's done his refuel when he's pitted, he might be in for a bit of a treat here. But you can see he's not served his mandatory pit stop of fuel, so he'll be hoping to get back into a decent position there before that can happen. So he's just got to pick his way through these back markers now, who won't get blue flags because he's 1 lap down on everybody else. So we'll just jump on board with car number 159, which is Mr. one and only Jackie Harris in the BMW M4, going down towards turn 8. He's currently lapping in the 2 minutes, which is representative of his position with those around him. Very solid race so far, consistent every lap. All his sector times are representative of each other, so he's having a good day out for him as well. We'll just jump back on board with somebody in the middle now just to see what's going on with Zach Grove. Here we go. So we've got a bit of a battle. Looks like it's starting to shape up here with Zach Grove in that Porsche. Who's got Fernandez in the McLaren behind him, under 6/10 away, with Lugar not far behind as well. So this could be very interesting here. A few laps time, if not, it looks like he's going to have to be clean here on the exit of turn 7. Let's jump on board with Alberto Fernandez just to see exactly what this looks like from his helmet, because he's all over the back of this Porsche. This might shape up here towards turn 8, a bit sooner than what I expected, as he comes now through turn 6. Got to make it nice and tidy through turn 7, foot flat on the floor, try not to lift as well, get it nice and clean on the exit here. Use the slipstream of the Porsche. trying to break that toe there, which, you know, you can understand that he would do, but I think he's going to have a little bit more to worry about than the toes. You can see that McLaren is definitely getting closer. It's gaining, it's gaining, it's gaining, it's gaining, but it's going to be a bit too far back, I think, by the time he gets to turn 8, unless he sends it up the inside. He's going to be level with him under there. He's just a little bit too far back. Oh, we may see another move then in towards turn 1. We'll stick with this part a little bit longer. We'll jump on board with the helicopter there, because there is definitely going to be something shaping up there very soon. Car number 88, our current leader, which is Mateus, is currently still lapping in the low 57s. Those three at the front, Spect, Augusto and Mateus Freitas, is still very much in a race of their own, with now a 30-second gap behind. You see there the McLaren made the move there on the Porsche through Sector 3, which again we expected to come there from Fernandez, who was all over the back of the Porsche. But obviously he's now got some company behind him as well, and what we don't want Louis Arjitsu to get caught up in this, as well as he tries to unlap himself. A little bit messy there from Fernandez on the exit of turn 13. The Porsche is going to try and make another move here on turn 1. Oh, he needed some paintwork on the bumper there. Jesus, he pulled out a little bit late there. Great move, but he left that a bit late to pull out, but never mind. McLaren's still all over the back of this Porsche. This battle is far from over now. The Porsche runs wide on the exit of turn 2. Neck and neck going down towards turn 3 now. This is a place where you really do not want to be on the inside because of how tight it gets. You can see the McLaren back out there, who opted for the racing line over the position. And Porsche runs wide there, who's outbraked himself. Going to have to try and do a safe rejoin here, and it's really going to cripple him. He's going to lose all sorts of positions here. He has dropped down. Zach Groh is going to be really upset with himself now. He's now running P13 because of that mistake and where he was going to be. You've got Louis Arjitsu here behind him in that McLaren, who is not actually racing the McLaren, so I'm hoping that we see Fernandez just let him go and let him unlap himself. You can see the blue flags there just appearing from the marshals a bit further back. We'll jump on board with the other TV cameras, and it's still neck and neck going into what these two are not racing. I just hope they do not take each other off. They're on a completely different lap number. Oh, that is such a great camera view through there. So you've got McLaren coming through there. You've got Lou Gar coming through there, and then you've also got Mr. Kurt Bradbury as well, who's just hanging back. He started P10, so we know he's got the pace to be up there. It's just waiting to see that pace develop now. We can see Springbrook has made it into the pit lane. He is coming in for the pits. He is going to go for the early refuel by the looks of it, and he's going to try and make his positions up that way. Who else we've got in the pits there? We've got car number 329, which is David Hulber in the Aston Martin V8. He started P12 and is currently P14. So he is serving his pit stop as we speak now. We will stay with that as they come out. I'll keep an eye on that clock so we know exactly when he comes out of the pit lane. Back on board with these leaders now, who are very much in a race of their own. The car number 88 just starting to come up on the back of these back markers now. I said to you at the start of this race, in the 15 car grid, we're going to see blue flags before the hour mark starts, and we're on 1 hour and 6 minutes, so those blue flags will appear up and let the leader through, which is going to help him a little bit. Chris Springbrook there served his first pit stop, jumping back on with him as he's trundling towards the end of the pit lane in P8. He's going to be ever so pleased with himself, the fact that he's managed to keep that position during that race. He's got the leader coming around the final corner now, so he's got some free air and he's got nothing in front of him. So Chris Davies, the only person to serve a pit stop, who's now P12, dropping down the standings. He'll be really quite pleased with himself. We've got Spect, who's also in the pit stop now. Or again, remember, refueling is compulsory, tyres are not. So this is going to change the lead. Let's see what happens now with the other two. The other two leaders have stayed out, from Mateus and Augusto, as they're coming through towards Sector 1. It'll be interesting to see if they respond to what Spect has done, who is now serving his pit stop. So you can see there that Spectre's now served his pit stop. He's very much back out on the track and is racing car number 5 as he comes through turn 7. We're just riding on board with the leaders now to see if they respond to what we've just seen there with the pit stop. I think they're going to have to, because their pace is so similar. Any form of tyre drop off or anything like that, even if they're half a second slower on one lap, that is going to be enough for the undercut in fact, to work. So I'll be very surprised if we don't see these front 2 drivers come into the pits now to respond to that pit stop that we've just seen by Spect as he comes in towards turn 9 himself. Now, are they going to pit on this occasion? They are not. Augusto stays out. Mateus stays out, sorry. Augusto is going to stay out as well. That is very surprising. Their pace is very similar, so they cannot afford any room for any error. We've also got Zach Groh in the pit stop and David Hubert, who is now 3 laps down. I suspect he's probably retired from this race as he's now 3 laps down. We've got Jackie Harris also in the pits. Matthew Mudd then obviously managed to get past Jeff a little bit earlier, the Bentley of car 242, as they're coming around the end of the lap in towards turn 11 and 12, sorry. Again, their pace very similar to each other, to 158.2 and a 158.5, so I would expect to see that more developed. As I'm just talking about the front runner's pace dropping off, I think Mateus must be listening to me, as he's heard me respond to what I was doing a second ago, and he is now 2/10 up on this particular lap. He's on for a personal best, which would give him the fastest lap as it stands at the moment, going down towards turn 8. Car number 27 behind him, Augusto, who is his nearest competition, is a lot longer way back on this time. So again, I'll be surprised if we don't see these two pit rather soon. If not, they're going to leave themselves out for the really powerful undercut. We know the undercut's powerful around here. We see it in real life, not only just on sim racing as well. So it's quite important that they get that pit stop absolutely bang on. I'll be surprised if they do not pit on this occasion. Got a 30-second stop go there for Zach Groh, so my assumption is going to be that is speeding in the pit lane. That's going to mess his race up and put him stone dead last, I believe, with Louis Ojitsu, who is also now on lap 19. Jackie Harris is in the pits as well, by the looks of it, in the BMW car 159, who has now served his mandatory pit stop, but he's not moving, so I'm wondering whether that's his race over as well. I'd like to think he'll get back on track. But as it stands at the moment, his car is still very much up on those jacks. Jumping back on board with the front runners then as they come in towards turn 1. The Aston Martin, car number 88 of Mateus Freitas, coming through towards turn 2, keeping it nice and tidy. His lap times are still representative. His last lap, which I was talking about, that he was up on, he was very much still up on his best time, and he did PB that final lap. Didn't give him the fastest lap by 100th of a second. That is how close these three at the front are running. And don't be fooled by the fact that Spect is currently down in P7. His pace has not changed, and he's still matching those to the front runners, and he's the only one to have pitted in the top 10. So let's see exactly how that race shapes up. Jackie Harris looks like he's moving again on the track, which I'm really pleased to see, as he's coming through sector 1 and now towards the long straight. So he'll have some fuel on board as we now reach 1 hour and 1 minute left to go of this race. Springbok still down in P11 there, but again, looking at the pit stops, he's going to make its way back up there to at least P7, but I suspect he will have enough to make it to at least P4. It's just whether Steve Ingeres there, running in P3 at the moment, has had the pace to stay out. We know that Springbrook was 4 seconds off before he pitted, and until we can see when Steve comes into the pits, which will be relatively soon, I would think. I would have thought he'll pop into the pit lane to get some more fuel on board. We won't know exactly how effective Springbrook's attempted undercut is going to be as Steve stays out on this occasion. Springbrook is coming down the main straight, so that is going to be a very interesting under and overcut situation as it happens. We'll jump back on board with the leaders then, with Matthias and Ed Augusto, who have still not pitted on this lap as well. So again, so not responding to what their attacking teammates did there of Specht, who managed to take P1 on several occasions. He pitted for fuel, and the other two have stayed out, but their lap times again very similar, a couple of tenths in either way, which when you're running that close to each other could be catastrophic when it comes to your pit strategy, because that does obviously give the undercut as an option to those running behind. So we'll come back on board at the moment. Fernandez 8 tenths up on this particular lap. Looks like I may have just junctioned out on the exit of turn 13, as he's now 5 tenths. Are we still 5 tenths up? This is going to be a PB for him. A 1:58.830, personal best for the McLaren number 24 Fernandez, as he comes back in towards turn 1, starting his 23rd lap. Matthias Freitas is 2 tenths up on this lap as well. We're going to see another personal best for him as he comes around the end of the lap at turn 13, keeping it nice and tidy on the curves there. As he goes across the line, we are going to see a PB from him. It may even be a fastest lap. We have brand new fastest lap there set by the Brazilian driver 88 Matthias Freitas in the Aston Martin, as he comes back towards turn 1 with a 1:56.4. So he is now 24 laps into this race, running P1, fueling requirement, tyres not, still setting at the fastest lap. There is no concern there of any tyre management, is there? Back on board was Chris Davis then, who has got the Porsche behind him, who is not the position. It's important to note that that is very much for a Zach. How does that work? He must be another lap down then, Zach Grosey. He is. He's on lap 21 with Springbrook on lap 23. So not for position, but this is where it gets a little bit frustrating if one car's behind faster than the other, and it's where your accidents can happen. As you just see the Porsche go a little bit deep there around the turn 11 and turn 10 and 11 complex. These front runners now see Matthias Freitas is stretching his legs. He's 3.2 seconds ahead in the lead now, which is the biggest gap we've seen in a very long time. And the Mr. Cooper there is 18 seconds off P3, so things are just starting to bunch up again now. These three at the front have the pace, and don't get me wrong, they've still got considerable pace compared to the rest of the field, but we are not seeing the gap and the huge purple sectors that we were seeing before. So I don't think these have got any slower. I just think the other members of the grid have got quicker. So only 4 cars have pitted so far, which is Jackie Harris, Zach Groh, Chris Davis and Mr. Specht himself, who we are expecting to see resume this P1 battle the second that he is able to do so, when those cars in front of him have pitted. for reference point, and Spect is currently lapping in the low 57s, with the two at the front still in the low 57s and high 56s. So his pace is not representative of the two at the front at the moment. So the undercut at the moment, I say at the moment because anything can change around Paul Ricard. We know that from previous races. At the moment, the undercut has not worked. Obviously, we still need to see that come out in practice. But on paper and all the statistics that I've got in front of me, it would suggest that there is still some work to be done there. Both of these two at the front staying out again, and as they start lap 26. .6 seconds now separates the top two. With Steven Gerrard just coming around the end of sector 3 there. It's a substantial gap. These two at the front are in a race of their own now. And as you can see, Springbrook there still running in P11, but again that's not representative until we've got all these pit stops out of the way, and we don't know when that's going to happen until it happens a bit later on in the race. Lamborghini then, 511 on Matthew Mudd there as he comes through sector 3, very much having a very good race. He actually started P9, so he'll be very impressed where he is at the moment. He's only got Andreas Speck behind him, who obviously will be a net position, so P6 is where he's going to end up as it stands at the moment. He'll be very pleased with that, and I would have thought what we've now got is we've got the leader behind him, well, the net leader behind him. I wouldn't have thought we'll see much of a battle here from Matthew Mudd as he goes down towards turn 1. Their lap times are nearly a second and a half different between them, so this battle is not going to last very long at all, I wouldn't have thought, with Matt Cooper, who is also driving the BMW M4 as he comes down towards turn 3. He's currently 2/10 up on his lap. We might see a personal best from him, with Andreas Specht, who is also 1/10 up on this particular occasion. So that Lamborghini in front of him is definitely going to be helping him with some slipstream. It's just whether it holds him now through this technical sector of turns 4, 5 and 6. We'll send it through the inside there of 5, 6. As he comes up towards 7 with foot flat on the floor in the Aston Martin. That's another place ticked off for Andreas Specht, so he will be very pleased with that, because that is what he needs for that undercut to work. Fernandez still running in at P7 then as he comes in towards the end of sector 1 himself. Matthias Freitas still staying out on this lap as he's now on, starts his lap 27, with Augusto still staying out behind him. Steve Enderes, who is the net challenge for Chris Davis, still staying out as well. He is currently in sector 3, and just for reference, he does appear to be dropping Chris Davis, so that undercut for Chris as well doesn't look like it's going to work. The overcut may be more powerful here. It looks like the tyres and the track's starting to wake up a bit now. Track's optimum, track temperature of 31, and the wind is currently non-existent. No rain forecast, and it's going to be nice and sunny, so the weather shouldn't play too much into consideration. I've just been told that Jeff has managed to pick himself up a drive-through penalty, car number 242 of that gold and purple Bentley. I'm going to assume, because I'm not told the information, that that is due to track limits. As you can see, his teammate just behind him there, Jackie Harris, who is 1 lap down, so those two won't get in each other's way and trip over each other. I apologise if it is not for track limits and it's for something different, Jeff, but that is all I've got to be able to assume on this moment in time. Matt Cooper having a great race then, currently running in P4. He managed to start in P7, so again, everything's come nice in him. He's only got Andreas Speck behind him, who's that net position. So again, very good race for him. 50 minutes to go. The standings as it stands at the moment, we've got Friteas, Augusto, Andreas Cooper, Specht, Mudd, Fernandez, Davis, Bradbury, Gar. Jeff with his drive-through, that's going to put him a little bit further back than where he'd like to be. Arjitsu, Groh, Harris and Huber, who we've got retiree from the race on lap 20, which is a shame. We have got 15 cars registered for the event. We've got 14 currently racing. Matthias Freitas again at 2/10 up on this lap. I know he's only in turn 3, but it just goes to show you those tyres are showing no signs of wearing off yet. and we're going to get some blue flags here for the Porsche of Zach Groh as they come down towards turn 4, 5 and 6 on this particular lap. You can see the Porsche just going wide there, trying to let the Aston Martin through, trying not to back it up too much. That gap, 2.7 seconds to P2. It's enough to keep him comfortable, but anything could happen with 49 minutes still left of the race. So you can see there that car number 5, which is the net P3 of Andreas Spett, is coming through turns 11 and 12 now, with the two front runners just about to make their way onto the straight down towards turn 8. That is going to be a very juicy undercut when it takes place. We're just waiting for these two front runners now to come in and lap. They may be fueled to run towards the end and refuel at the end, which will explain their significant pace difference at the beginning of this race. And they are early braking markers. That could be the case. You can just see in my corner now that Jeff is serving that drive-through penalty that he got, which we are assuming it was for track limits around this wonderful French circuit in the south of France. Only about 40 minutes away from Marseille and an hour the other way to Saint-Tropez. So all down the south of France region there. The weather's very representative of what it would be, I am sure. Still on board with Matthias here at the front, who's on his 29th lap now on this set of tyres and not stopped, still running comfortably in P1 with 2.7 seconds behind him Augusto, who again we suspect is probably conserving his fuel and his tyres now, because his pace is bang on every single lap, and he does occasionally just poke his nose into the rearview mirror of Matthias on that straight, so he knows he is still there as they come around the final corner now of turn 13. Going to cross the start finish line, and they're going to start at their 30th lap. Fernandez P6, 2 tenths up on this particular occasion. Springbrook into P7, so you can see those pit stops there have started to take place now. That's put him back in 2 places behind where he started, so he'll be very happy. You've got Matthew Mudd there who's still yet to pit. That's more or less a guaranteed position for him. And as I said earlier, Steve and Jerez there have pitted, so what we were expecting to see a undercut for Springbrook, which we think is going to work. We're just waiting for confirmation that it has worked. Steve Indra is now in P8 as he comes through the end of sector 1. That's worked lovely for Springbrook. What a great undercut that was. Knew exactly what he's doing. Went in with that early pit stop, managed to make it stick. Drove consistently throughout, didn't put a foot wrong, currently in P6. He'll be very happy with that. Fernandez is just up the road, 3.8 seconds in front of him, the car number 24 of that McLaren. He's still yet to pit, and so is Matthew Mudd, who is a little bit further up the road from him. He's about, I think he's about 8 seconds up from him, so we will see exactly what that looks like when those two come into pit. We can just see the fuel consumption is just starting to take its toll on these cars as more of them are pitting, with Arjitsu still to pit, Bradbury still to pit, Fernandez, Mudd, and of course the two front runners that we go on board with again as they come towards the end of their lap. We're waiting to see whether this attempted undercut from Spect actually works, who is currently further back. Just see the McLaren there dive off into the pits, which I'm assuming is the McLaren of Bradbury. I just couldn't quite see back there. It is car number 87 coming into the pits now with his hazard lights on there. He's going to refuel. He's going to come back out a little bit further back. He'll be he's done well to make his way to P8. He's had a very consistent race. Also got Arjitsu in the pit. He's just come off the jacks there. You can see he's rolling again. He's having a very much recovery job after his early contact into the race with Springbrook, who is currently running P6 with 2 guaranteed positions in front of him. If he can keep things consistent, he will gain 1 place throughout the whole of this event, which he will be very pleased with. 2 front runners still out there. 4-second gap now between Augusto and Frateus, which is a little bit more than what it was on the last couple of laps. So I wonder when we're going to see Augusto come into the pits at the end of this lap. He's halfway round, going down towards turn 8 now. Car number 27, Aston Martin. Both front runners in the pits then, as you can see. So let's jump on board with Spect and see exactly how this is going to work out. He's currently in sector 3. This is going to be quite tight, so I think we're quite interested to see how this works. Staying on board with him now as he comes through towards turn 11, 12 and 13. I can see that both of those 2 front runners now are towards the end of their pit stop. They're 32.7 seconds in, which is the estimated time. They're both moving again, so jump on board with the helicopter as these 2 come out. This is going to be very close now. Jump on board with Andreas Spect again. Has the undercut worked on this occasion? I don't think it will have done. I think he's a bit too far back, which it has done. Unfortunately for him, he's still P3. He'll be happy with that, but he's just a bit too far back to make anything stick on this occasion. Zach Groves there got a drive through. When did that pop up? He must have had some track limit warning as well. Sorry for anybody watching, I went a bit quiet there, just sorting out some technical errors, so we're all sorted now. It was the last 10 minutes, so we're a little bit quiet, apologies for that. Jumping back on board with the front now, so Matthias Freitas, who kept that lead even though he has pitted. I don't know whether he expected to keep that or not based on how long he stayed out for, but you can see the overcut here definitely worked, and that's purely because of his raw pace, with Augusto 2.5 seconds back and Spec 6.7. I wonder whether we've seen Spec play his hand now and not be able to take it, as he just unlaps himself there. Or sorry, he just passes the back marker there of Jackie Harris in the purple and gold BMW. Springbok now in P5. And he's actually overtaken Fernandez before he served his pit stop. That's how much pace Springbok's currently showing through here. Matt Mudd is currently P4, but again, pit stop in hand. He is currently going through turns 3 and 4. So Springbok, I would have said, is definitely guaranteed P4 as it stands at the moment. And unless we see a mistake from them front three, I think the Springbok will second for P4. But knowing him quite well, I would have thought then he'll be quite pleased with that, considering he started P5 as well, the car number 111 in the BMW M4, which is what we would have expected to see. That Grove there serving his drive-through again. I'm assuming that must be for track limits. The Lamborghini, let's jump on board with the rear wing of that as we go down towards turn 8. No one in sight behind him, having a great race out here on his own. As he now comes into the pits, we'll jump on board with Springbok now to watch him take that P4 that he's very much worked towards. Still a bit lively there towards it. Looks like it understeers at the corner entry and oversteers on the exit, which I'll imagine is your worst nightmare as a driver as he comes down towards the turn 1 now. He takes that P4 back that he's been working for all this race after his early collision. I think he'll be very happy with that, because I think if he's being honest, and I'll openly say it to his face as well, I think if he's been honest, P3 was probably out of the equation given the pace of those in front of him. He'll be very happy with P4. You can see there he's currently lapping in the 58.6s, and those at the front are in the 56s dead, so he's a good 1.5 to 2 seconds off that pace. So as you can see, everyone that had penalties has cleared their penalties. Both Fernandez and Matt Mudd exiting the pits. Fernandez seems to be taking a bit long though. I wonder whether he's changing his tyres. Yes, he has. He just dropped off the track there, so he's had a tyre change as he now comes out towards the end of the pit. Everyone has served their mandatory pit stops with 35 minutes to go. Everyone's refueled, so now what you see is what you get. Everyone is now racing for position. Everybody is on the same lap up until Jeff, who is currently on lap 32. And we are going from there as we go racing once again. Leading the way there with a 3-second gap at the moment. You would argue you would struggle to bet against Matthias Freitas there, the car number 88 of the Aston Martin, coming through towards sector 1 now as we ride back on board with Springbok, who has retaken his P4 position with a 3.4 second gap behind of Steven Gerrard. Let's keep an eye on that and make a note of that gap, because it'll be interesting to see how that develops now, because we know Springbok pitted relatively early, so his tyres are going to be doing a lot less towards the end of this race. That he may regret that, who knows. I'm going to step away for 2 minutes. We will leave you on board with the leaders at the front. I'll be back in 2 moments. Okay, so 30 minutes left of this race now, and the standings are as they were when I left. We've got Springbok now up into P3 after we've had a disconnect from Spect there by the looks of things. So he has gone from the server, which means P3 is now on the cards for Springbok, which will make him absolutely over the moon. I'm just going to bring up the alternate screen for me to view. As we thought. So this is going to be really interesting. Now Springbok's on his way for a surprise podium, who is currently their way back off P2. It would be unfair for me to set him that challenge of finishing P2 on the podium, but considering we started P5, went to last after his contact at the beginning of the race, and has now worked his way back up to P3 again, he is going to be absolutely beaming with a smile. As we're on board with the leader now, as they go down towards turn 8 with that 3-second gap there. That's not changed at all in the last couple of moments, so we'll just jump back on board then with Chris Davies as he comes down the start finish now to cross the line. He's going to set himself a lap time of a 1:58.9, which is about a second and a half slower than his fastest time. Bear in mind these cars have only recently just taken on fuel again, so we don't know what those fuel loads are, we don't know what people are doing or how people have decided to do it. We'll jump back on board with Jeff, who is currently lap 36. He's having a good race for him as well, considering the troubles that he got himself into earlier. He started P11 today and is currently running in P9, so he's going to be very happy with himself in that Bentley Continental GT3. 2018 model, that is. The 2016 is somewhat less desirable as he goes around turn 8, keeping it just inside the chevrons there. He will be quite pleased with that. He's on the absolute back end of Mr. Bradbury as well, who is in that McLaren taking it through sector 3. I suspect we may see a battle start to develop here in the very near future. We're back on board with Stephen Jurez there, who is currently a fair way off the back of Springbok. In fact, he is the other end of the straight. So again, Springbok here in for a good result if he can maintain his consistent laps. 27 minutes left to go. Anything could happen, especially at Paul Ricard. But we won't jinx anything there. Back on board with Matthew Mudden in the Lamborghini, who is all over the back of the McLaren in front of him. That McLaren, remember, is not for position. That is of, I believe it is for, I say who I believe it's for when I can remember. Luai Jitsu, that's it, car number 17. Who had some contact early on the race and has been driving his recovery race ever since. Who's doing quite well, he's in P11 and we're really pleased with that. So again, he's having a very good race. Back on board with the leaders then, we've got our Gustu there, who is currently on his 39th lap with a 3.2 second deficit to the leader. Something again which he will try and work on, but again it doesn't appear to have that pace of the leaders. Again, he's only getting away by a tenth or two a lap, but after you've been racing for an hour and a half, you can see that tenth a lap soon becomes 3 seconds. Springbok then still running P3, running on board with him now. His lap time's a little bit more representative of where he is. He just needs not to push, and he just needs to hit every apex. Don't worry about his lap times and just get to the end now, because he's got plenty of breathing space behind him. The car number 5 of Steven Derez, who is coming down towards turn 1. He's Springbok's nearest competition into turn 1. His lap times are also a 58.2, which matches those of him in front. So again, I can't imagine us seeing any great position changes for him there. Right on board with Lou Garvin in that orange and blue McLaren that keeps confusing me with the Porsche as he comes in towards the turns 10, 11 and 12 bit of sector 3. Very technical. It's important to lift and apply the throttle where you have to here, because otherwise it can get you out of sync for the entire section of corners, which can have a real impact on your lap times. But again, he's done everything he needs to there. He's right on the racing line as he comes towards turn 13, hits the brakes just right at the marker there, takes a little bit of the curve, doesn't run too wide, hitting those yellow markers there, pulls back over to the right hand side of the track, which is the racing line for this specific circuit as they go in towards turn 1 again. His company around him is 5 seconds is his nearest battle. Again, he will just be trying to get the car back home again now. That is a great result for him. Did start P8, but do remember he had those troubles at the beginning of the race, so again he will be quite happy. Matthew Mudden in the Lamborghini, still got the McLaren who has now passed him, staying just inside them chevrons at turn 8. Remember, that is a track warning if you exceed the track limits there, which is where we've seen 2 drivers today already penalised for their track limits, and they have served the drive-through penalty. Jump back on board with the front runners again. You see exactly what's happening at the front. 3.1 seconds, that gap's not getting any bigger, not getting any smaller, so these two are matching their pace. I can tell you now, actually looking at the timing screen, that they are 3/10 within each other's lap time. So again, exactly what we saw at the start of the race. We have obviously lost Andreas Specht, who will be a little bit gutted. We're now down to 14 cars on the track. David Hubert is back running again. It's worth noting that he was in the pits for a significant amount of time, which is why he is 6 laps down. That's not because of his pace, that is because he was in the pits for that length of time. Jackie Harris moves his way up into P12 because of Zach Grove dropping his way down to P13. Again, their lap times are very similar, having a little bit of a battle at the back there themselves. Springbrook now in, crossing the line. He is P3 as he comes towards turn 1. He may start to get a glimpse of those front runners at some point during this race, based on his current pace, which is more or less matching those in front, but he's certainly not been in a position to challenge with only 20 minutes left of this race to go. This track temperature's gone up 33 degrees. It was 31 when the race started. That will be having some significant effect on the tyres, especially when the forecast is sunny and staying sunny. So let's hope the drivers have accounted for that in their selected pressures that they put on this morning before they rolled out of the garage and entered the pit stops. Obviously a lot of drivers here haven't changed their tyres. The pit lane is open for tyre repairs. It's worth a reminder that we are running the 13 corner version of this track today and not the F1 version, of which consists of 17 corners. The most noticeable difference between the two circuits is the chicane between turn 7s and turn 8. Once entered a league race actually where they enforced the use of that chicane, and that made things very interesting. It's quite good fun but very interesting, but for the live stewards it's an absolute nightmare, as you can imagine. As I mentioned earlier on at the start of this race, this is my first broadcast for the Half Past Gaming community. So as these drivers here, I can't familiarise myself with their usual driving styles, techniques, their pit strategies, that sort of thing. But I'm sure it's something that we will soon pick up between us. We'll just jump on board with the other camera now as we go down towards turn 8 of the Augusto 27 Aston Martin V8 Vantage, who's going to be getting a bit of a tow actually of that car in front, which will be pleasing him nicely, which is the leader of Mateus, car number 88, a little bit closer, 2.7 seconds. That's the closest we've seen them for quite some time. Wind still non-existent, which is always interesting. If the wind is blowing in towards that turn 8, that can really make the car unstable on the entry. So that's quite important actually to take note of that, especially at some circuits here. Here's probably one of the most effective because of how flat it is around the circuit. Grandstands and that sort of thing are a long way from the track. There's a lot of runoff here, so it can have quite a big impact on those factors. Pembroke's in third, then he'll be again really pleased with that. I can feel the smile that he's going to have on his face when he finishes this race. Back on board with Matt Cooper then, who was having a great race as well himself. Started P7, currently running P6. Just subjected there to the blue flag of the leaders, and that's how fast these leaders are now. They're now lapping themselves from P6. That BMW there comes through turn 1. It looks absolutely amazing, does that BMW, as he now comes towards the end of his 41st lap, so we're now on lap 43. Where has the evening gone? With 19 minutes left to go, we're currently with Mercedes Freitas, Augusto, Springbok, and Jerez Mudd, Cooper, Bradbury, Fernandez, HFG's one and only Jeff, Louis Ajitsu, HFG's one and only Jackie Harris, and Zach Groh and David Hilbert. As we are now on lap 43 with 19 minutes of the race left. The current local time is 12:06 PM with a track temperature of 33. Track is reading optimum. Blue flag again for the BMW of Mr. Cooper, number 96. Gets out of the way there on the straight. Probably not cost him too much there because he's now picked up the toe of the car he lets through. That's if you want to let anybody go on this track, and that's where you want to do it for the Metalhead Red Bull Racing 96 BMW. Runs very wide there through turn 9, gets himself back on the track. Luckily he's got nobody behind him there to capitalise on that error. You can just see the brakes glowing there as he stops, so we know the brakes work, but obviously missed his braking point or brake failed. I wouldn't have thought the 1 and 2 pads would be failing yet though. We tend to see a little bit more wear out of those than what we would be at this current time. Back on board with Chris Davis then, who is just coming up towards turn 7 as he puts his foot flat on the floor down towards turn 8 with the car number 159 Jackie Harris in front of him, who obviously will be lapped when he catches up with him, but that will be another lap or 2 away yet, so he will make use of that slipstream. Again, P1 and P2 a little bit out of reach for Chris on this particular event, but he will still be capitalising on that P3 from the disconnect that we had earlier. Back on board with Matt Cooper of that BMW, who's having a great race this afternoon. Very consistent as he comes in towards sector 1, turns 4, 5 and 6, before foot flat on the floor down towards turn 8. Alberto Fernandez in the McLaren as he comes down. He's still battling away up here with Jeff. They're having a great little battle this race, they are. Jeff just seems to be a little bit further ahead on this particular lap though. We've seen Jeff serve a drive-through as well, so again he'll be really pleased with that in P8, having started P11. So back on, staying on board with this battle then between HFG's one and only Jeff and the Fernandez McLaren at 24 as they finish their 45th lap, about to start their 46th, with 15 minutes left to go. A little bit wide on the exit there for the McLaren, and that could be a mixture of tyres, fuel and fatigue, or concentration or anything for these drivers now, as they're a substantial way into this race. We started with a 1 hour 46 on the clock, and we are 15 minutes left to go. We are very much nearly there now. Back on board with the leaders, not a lot's changed here. We've still got a 3-second gap between the two Aston Martins leading this race, which is the gap we've seen really for the last hour. So the pace that they've got is incredible to be able to match each other's pace and continually match each other's pace. There's been no change in that gap at all, which is quite something really. Springbok there still P3, just starts to cross the start finish line. He is now on his 45th lap of this event. And he won't catch the leaders on this occasion, but he has nobody to worry about behind him as well, as his nearest competition is just coming around the last turn now. So I would have thought, no commentators curse, Springbok's got some time to make a couple of fatigue mistakes here towards the end of this race and still recover from them. Nobody else on track as well. He may get he will get a blue flag for in a moment with, I think that must be Jackie Harris still in front of him, which it is. I've just seen the purple rear ring of that BMW go around turn 6 towards turn 7. So again, he'll make use of that slipstream on this occasion. He won't get by him on this lap, I would have thought. I'm just hoping that Chris doesn't catch him during that sector 3, because that will slow him down, trying to get past these lapped cars. Back on board with Stephen Jerris then, who is coming around the back end of the track now towards turn 5, 6 and 7. Again, having a bit of a race on his own, a bit more company behind him. Now Matthew Mudd in that Lamborghini is not far behind him. We know that Matthew can put that Lamborghini exactly where he wants to put it. We see him in the early stage of this race racing quite well and defending quite well. So as he's now got his foot flat on the floor down towards turn 8, and he will tow the McLaren of Luajitsu behind him, which is car number 17, who is 1 lap down on this particular occasion, which is a real shame because his pace is actually matching those of the front runners. So that mistake at the start cost him dear. Matt Cooper then in the BMW M4, car number 96, he's also on that straight now down towards turn 8. He again has not a lot of company around him, so he's having a nice race, and he'll just now be focusing on crossing that finish line towards the end of the race. Jeff and Fernandez still having a little bit of a battle here, although Jeff does appear to be pulling away on this occasion now. He's now 1.7 seconds ahead of Alberto Fernandez, so we will keep an eye on that battle, but I think that one may well and truly be over now. Aljizo is 4/10 up on this lap. He is now in the slipstream of that Lamborghini, which he's now going to try and unlap himself, which is an absolute pain to try and do, especially if your pace is of those around you. So he may now, I just hope that they have contact, because it will ruin both of their races. You've got Jitsu, who is on a recovery drive, who is currently running P11, which is great, and then you've also got the Lamborghini of Matthew Mudd there, 511, who is currently running P5, who will be over the moon with that, having started P9. Just a bit too far back again. He will make use of that slipstream now, the Lamborghini going down towards turn 8, but he's just too far back to capitalise on that. With 10 minutes left to go of this race, you can see most drivers have got a comfortable gap between each other now, so it's just a case now of remaining consistent for as long as possible. You can see on the track map there in the top right hand corner of your screen that they are very much just now a case of trying to keep things smooth and simple towards the end of the race, with the leaders still 3 second gap between the two of them, which has been that gap now for the last at least an hour. How good they are to maintain that pace is quite something. Jumping back on board then when we can with Springbok. I should just wait for his name to pop up for me. There he is. He's running in P3. He's about to get himself his podium, which is going to be a great result for him as he goes down towards the straight. He's towing the 159 Jack Harris with him, who's been giving him a wonderful tow for the last couple of laps, but then blue flags finally popped up and he had to get out of the way for the South African driver of Chris Davis as he comes towards turn 8. Kurt Bradbury then in that very nice matte duck egg blue 87 McLaren as he comes down towards the start finish straight. Again, he's having a good race himself. He started at P10, he's going to finish P7 as it stands. He will be smiling as well, although Jeff is now catching him up. He is 3.9 seconds back. Going to make a note of that because it'll be interesting to see what that looks like in a few laps time. And we've probably only got about 4 or 5 laps left at best. So if he's going to do anything, he's going to have to do it soon, with them leaders still 3.1 seconds apart from each other. Really is going to be interesting to see how that finishes. Okay, so that gap behind now then is 4 seconds, so it doesn't appear to be getting any closer. But although he will be very much aware of how close Jeff is to him towards the end of this race, so he will now be trying to drive a very smooth and consistent finish. Springbok still in P3 with Augusto in P2. 3 second gap still, believe it or not. I'm going to put a little poll out at the end of this race to ask how far the gap was between the two front runners. Matthias there having a fantastic race. He's had a little bit of a scuffle at the start to try and maintain his P1, but he's managed to hold on to it as he links the corners up now of sector 1 as he comes towards out of the exit of sector 1, which is turn 7, down towards turn 8, foot flat on the floor, towing the McLaren of Arjitsu behind him as he comes towards the end. He will be starting the 50th lap on the next race with 7 minutes left to go, so we'll be seeing approximately 3 or 4 laps until we see that checkered flag come up. Stephen Gerrard there running in P4, having a nice little lonely race there on his own. He's got the car number 329 keeping him company behind him, which is the lapped car of David Hubert, who is also in sector 3. Car number 96 then, which belongs to that wonderful Mr. Matt Cooper in the BMW M4. Again, he's having a very lonely race out there on the back straight on his own. P6, great race for him. Started P7, he's going to place, he's kept his way out of trouble, drove a really consistent race. Pit stop was absolutely bang on, no delay there at all. And he really has linked the corners up well, especially towards this second stint since he left the pit stop, which has rewarded him with P6 as it stands. Matthew Mudd in P5, who also started in P9, so again he'll be really chuffed with that, although he has got a bit of company behind him, which are the leaders, so he'll be getting some blue flags for those in a second. As we jump on board his rear wing, we can watch them come by. Nice and tidy there on the exit. Aston Martin is so much later on the brakes. He's gaining some. I mean, they're still lapping, just to give people context here, he's still lapping in the 56, and those two at the front are the only two lapping in the 56s by a considerable margin. The next nearest time to that is a 57.9. So they are a second quicker a lap, an hour and a half into this race still. So we're going to see some blue flags soon for the Lamborghini of Mr. Matthew Mudd as he comes down towards the back straight, but again he'll want to do this without compromising himself as best as he can. We will jump back on board with those in a moment. We'll jump back on board with Mr. Springbok as he goes around these last few corners. of Sector 3. His best lap time is still a 57.2. He's not so much near that at the moment, but you wouldn't expect that at this stage of the race, especially with his tyres in the condition they will be in. Remember, he had a very early stop, which on this occasion and this event has paid off big time for him, as he's currently running P3 around Port Ricard in this 103-minute race with How Fast Gaming. Ball with Fernandez now in the McLaren 24. He's had a relatively good race. He started P13, he's currently in P9. He's not had the most smoothest of races. He had to respond to a couple of threats around him more than one occasion, but he'll be quite happy with where he is now, I would imagine. He's 10 seconds off Jeff in front, who we saw that little battle shaping up. Bradbury now is coming across the start-finish line with Jeff in his mirrors behind him as he goes across the line. We'll get that time, 4.1 seconds, so that's not got any closer over the last few laps now. Jumping back on board with the leaders as we go into the final 3 minutes of this race. He's going to be getting some blue flags left, right and Chelsea as he comes through turn 8, foot flat on the floor, brake at the 50 mile, drop it down into 5th and just close your eyes and hope you make it around the other side. I'm just joking. That isn't what they'll do at all. That's what I do. That's not what they'll do. As you can see from their pace, it somewhat differs from what everybody else has got in front of them. Let's jump back on board with Chris Davies, Mr. Springbok, car number 111 of that BMW M4. He crosses the line and he's just about to start his 51st lap of this event with 2 minutes and 55 left to go. He will be absolutely beside himself with that P3 place that he's managed to get through hard work. That early pit stops gambled. We've seen throughout this race that other people's gambles with pit stops didn't quite pay off. Specifically with the front runners, so Chris will be very happy with where he's currently sat. Back on board with the Lamborghini of Matthew Mudd, car 511, who's just been lapped by the leader for the second time at this race, as he goes across the line to start his 51st lap as well. Cars look so good through this sector 1, they really do. Twists and turns. Jump in on board with Mr. Matt Cooper then as he starts his 51st lap as well. He comes into turn 1 again, very lonely race for him, got nobody else around him, but again he'll be quite happy with where he is. He started P7, he's just got to hook the corners up and bring the car home now. 1 minute 51 to go. Never say nothing happens, but it should now be fairly plain sailing for all of them. That gap's down to 2 seconds at the front there. Are we seeing a last minute attack here by Augusto, which would be amazing if we did. That is the closest we've seen the gap all race. Back down to 2 seconds. Up on board with his rear wing just to see how close he is. And we've got Augusto there who's currently caught up with running traffic from the Lamborghini, who needs to get out of his way if he wants to make this happen. He's going to catapult him through turn 8 there. Is the Lamborghini going to get out of his way? He's not on this occasion, although he does run right across them chevrons, which will have cost him dear. So this will be the penultimate lap for these drivers. Turn 13 again, linking the corners up. That gap is now 1.9 seconds. He's got 1 lap to make a move, but based on their current pace, which is a 1:57.5, 1:57.1, we're not going to see too much of an impact of that last minute lunge. He's now back to 3 seconds again, so that toe which benefited him on the previous lap has now gone. He's 2 tenths up on his current lap. Is Matthias Freitas as he comes through towards turn 3 now of Paul Ricard with 18 seconds left on the clock. I think we are not going to see a lead change at this late stage, but again, never say never. Springbok still running in P3. He's going to be absolutely loving that as he comes down towards the back straight. He's going to have to do another lap though, because he's not yet been lapped by the leaders. Unlike Stephen Juris, who has got the Jackie Harris HFG BMW M4 on his tail for him as well, which obviously, remember, is not pole position. That is a lapped car who will be giving him a nice tow down now towards the end. Matt Cooper is currently P6, started P7, worked his way up through the grid. He has started his final lap as well now. Who else? We've got Kurt Bradbury, who is also on his final lap. He's just gone across the start-finish line. He's got Jeff hunting him down, who's 4 seconds back. Again, all he's got to do is link this lap up together, and that P7 is his, which he will be really happy with, having started P10. Back on board with the leaders now as they come around towards Sector 3 for the final time of this event. Going in towards Turn 9 now, he's got some blue markers. Will he be thinking, do I need to get by them, or will he just sit behind them, hoping he's got the gap he needs? Jeff in that Bentley is going to have to get out of his way. He's going to get blue flags any moment now. His timing gap is... there we go, he gets around the outside there of Turn 9 and Turn 10. And we're going to see him come around the final corner now of Turn 12 towards Turn 13. Nice and early on the brakes, don't take any late chances during this race. He has driven a fantastic race from start to finish, and he well and truly earns his victory, but so does Augusto in that car behind. They have had a great race and battled it out throughout. He did not put a foot wrong. What a race. That is a great result for the Brazilian driver there of the car number 88. That is fantastic to watch, with him and Augusto in both in Aston Martins, both battling out equal pace throughout the race. Their best lap times are within a tenth, less than a tenth in fact. They are about 900ths between each other. They park next to each other there towards the end of the race. We'll jump on board with Springbok now, who's also going to take his podium away from this race. He drove a great start of the race. He ended up with some contact with the McLaren at the very beginning. We were on board with him when that happened. He decided to take the early pit stop, which paid off big time for him. We saw earlier that the undercut did not always work. It's worked for some drivers, it hasn't worked for others. The overcut's been quite powerful here, but on this occasion Chris has managed to benefit from it as he comes up towards Turn 8 now with his foot flat on the floor. Back on board with Stephen Juris, who has been his nearest competition throughout this race. The undercut worked for Chris, didn't for Steve, as he comes up towards Turn 8 as well now. Back on board with Springbok as he comes round towards Turn 10 to take that third place trophy, which he's worked so hard for today. He will be really over the moon with this result. Who else have we still got left on track then? We've got Zach Groh in the Porsche, who is currently running in P13, 5 laps down from the leader. Remember, he came into some trouble at the beginning of this race. So again, he will be pleased to have finished the race. Everyone now being shown the checkered flag. Springbok, again, great race. Bit of trouble at the start, managed to come home. He's going to take a podium here, third place. He'll be over the moon with that. What a great drive we've seen from him today. Great recovery drive. The early pit stop paid off, and he will not be regretting that decision. Let's jump back on board with the Mercedes car number 5, Steve again, who was battling with Springbok. The undercut paid off for Chris. It didn't for Steve, and that's why he's going to bring home P4. But again, he will be quite pleased with that result, considering he also started P6. They've both had a great drive there. So your top 3 then. We've finished there with the car number 88, Matthias there, who finished flag to flag there. A little bit of a battle with the top 3 Aston Martins. We lost one halfway through the race, with Augusto bringing home P2. That 3-second gap didn't fluctuate too much towards the end of the race as they matched their lap pace, lap after lap. And Chris Springbok there taking the final piece of silverware home with his P3 finish and a great recovery drive. That, ladies and gentlemen, is your 103 minutes of HFG's Paul Ricard race. I will leave you with the replay. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will be broadcasting, I hope, the next event. I need to speak to Jeff about exactly how we're going to work that, but thank you very much for everyone that joined us. That was a great race, and the top 3 will be chuffed with that after they drove flag to flag. I will leave you with the race highlights. Thank you very much.